This government is starting to have its true colours revealed. In fact, it's also starting to reveal its true colours to the country. The latest economic figures show that strong economic growth continues to elude us. The economy growing at just above 2%. Nothing like the 3% or more that we need. Yet we've still got inflation that's too high, preventing further interest rate cuts. Why? Well, because much of the economic growth is coming from government spending and high immigration. The Albanese Labor government's record spending and borrowing continues, driving inflation up, squeezing our cost of living, and also acting like a handbrake on productivity. The private part of the economy, the market economy, the parts that produce the wealth and fund the governments with their taxes, well, they're still sluggish.
You get a bigger public sector, it's less efficient than the private sector in doing things, you get lower productivity. That means slower growth in living standards, it means higher inflation than what otherwise has been the case, and it means higher interest rates, unfortunately, than would otherwise have been the case.
And while the government remains focused on everything but the economy, pushing its social media ban for teenagers and environmental laws that actually stymie investment, and it continues to employ tens of thousands of extra public servants, the Treasurer thinks he's doing a wonderful job.
So I see this commentary about public spending, I see this commentary about public demand, but what the numbers tell us today is the growth is coming from the private sector in ways that we've been planning for, preparing for and frankly hoping for.
This smugness reveals the true arrogance and delusion of this government. While families and small businesses fight through a cost of living and housing crisis and the debt and deficits mount, this government shows no sign of trimming its own cloth. I mentioned the social media ban. Well, back in September, I criticised the minister responsible for that, Annika Wells, for travelling to the United Nations in New York City to spruik that policy at a time when there was a 000 disaster unfolding at home and when a clutch of other ministers, including the Prime Minister, were also in New York. They were busy turning their backs on Israel at the UN. Well, we now know that Wells's trip with two staffers cost more than $100,000. And on top of that, they put on an event that cost $70,000. I guess that's all small beer for people spending other people's money. The minister was asked about it today by Sky's Ruben Spargo.
How do you justify spending this amount of taxpayers' dollars?
Well, the reason you know all those things is because we're transparent about them, and we will disclose them and we'll continue to disclose information about that trip through the usual processes. That trip was undertaken as the Minister for Communications, and I would think the people who were there for that UN event who join us in this room today would agree with me that it was incredibly important. That event fueled a global momentum in this space.
You don't think that was expensive for airfares? Over $94,000?
I've answered your question.
You got to love that. Everyone who was on the trip thought it was worthwhile. Yeah, the true colours of a government out of touch with everyday concerns. And when it comes to the economy, one of the key factors where government policy can make a real difference is energy. And while energy prices continue to rise, up more than $1,000 from when Labor promised to cut them by $275, and now the regulator says hundreds of thousands of consumers are struggling to pay their electricity bills. Well, Labor continues to insist that its renewables plan will work, which is highly doubtful, and they even claim it will lead to price reductions, cheaper power.
I'll tell you what else hasn't changed, the economics, that renewables are the cheapest form of energy.
The cheapest form of new energy is renewable energy.
What's good for your bill is good for emissions. Renewable energy is the cheapest form of energy.
Yet experts, even experts committed to the renewables transition, they're lining up to tell us that cheaper electricity will not be happening.
Coal-fired power is the lowest and it is the most reliable form of generation going around. With the technical life and the economic life of coal-fired power, there will be a change over to a new system, and that new system is most likely to be renewables and storage with a little bit of gas and some hydro. But there's no point saying it's going to be cheaper because it's not.
Yeah, the Albanese government is selling a lie. It's promised what it can't deliver. And yet in the face of that reality and all the facts, it continues to sell a fantasy. That's the true colours of this government. It's indulging itself in ideological and political fantasies, while in the real world, the economy and mainstream Australians struggle along.